Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins. I will be joined by Micheal Robinson here in a little bit. We're going to be talking some baseball because it's finally time this Thursday, a day we thought that could never come or may never come back during the wintertime, during the lockout. We wondered, when would baseball be back? Well, lo and behold, it is back. We're going to be giving our preview of, our division winners, who's going to, kind of make the biggest impacts this season, our World Series predictions, all wrapped up into this episode. We're also going to talk some Final Four recap, and that's actually what we're going to kick off the show with tonight, as we have, right before one season begins, another one has to end, and that's what happened with college basketball the other night. We had the Final Four, Kansas versus UNC, but before we had to get there, we had to go through Saturday's games in the Final Four. Number one, Kansas defeating Villanova 81-65. North Carolina winning 81-77 over Duke. The first time that rivalry game has ever been played in the tournament, so that was a lot of fun. It set up the stage for Monday night, the national championship game, Kansas versus North Carolina. And North Carolina looked to be the better team in the early stages of this game. They led 40-25 at halftime. The Jayhawks do rally to tie the game at 50 with 10:23 to play. David McCormick hits a jumper to make it 72-69. And Caleb Love misses a three at the buzzer, and Kansas completes the the biggest championship comeback in history. So what a tournament, a great cap on the end of a fantastic tournament, and that's kind of what we wanted to, why we wanted to touch on the NCAA tournament here, at the start of the show here, because, we did our preview of the tournament, we had a lot of high hopes. And I think this is the tournament that the type of postseason that we wanted to see as college basketball fans. Whether you're a diehard fan, whether you're just a casual fan of college basketball, this is pretty much exactly the tournament you could have asked for. You had big storylines going in with Gonzaga. Could Baylor repeat? Coach K's retirement tour. That all was a lot of fun. We had our madness. St. Peter's run as the number 15 seed, the furthest 15 seed to ever, has ever gone. Told you so, B. Scott. B. Scott and I talked about what, surprises could happen in the Sweet 16. I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that we were set up for some more Purdue disappointment, and well, Purdue didn't disappoint in the sense that they disappointed. So that was pretty wild. You had New Mexico State and Richmond pulling upsets as well, so we had all the craziness, and even through all the mayhem, we still wind up with 4 blue bloods in the Final Four, and we get 3 terrific games capped off with an all-time comeback. I mean, and you think like, oh yeah, that's a great tournament, but we've had great NCAA tournaments in the past. I know I've said tournament a lot, in this open. But and I know that it's easy to say after, March Madness every year to talk about how great it was. But after no tournament in 2020 and 2021 with little to no fans, the 2022 tournament was everything you could have asked for. I mean, if you swapped years, if you put last year's Final Four, even though, I know we had the great game with Gonzaga and UCLA, if you flip-flop it and you have the tournament end the way it did last year with just an absolute drubbing, Baylor over Gonzaga, I don't think it feels quite as special, quite as good as you get when you have just 2 incredible programs, one of which was an underdog coming into the tournament, and another one that was a 1 seed coming into March Madness. They, go and do this epic battle, which not only is it, a great game, but it also contains an all-time comeback. I mean, that's fantastic. And I'm really happy with how March Madness came out this year. Not so happy in the fact that I did really poorly in a lot of my bracket pools. Shout out to Nikki, one of our friends of the show here. who won both her bracket pools that she was in, picking Kansas correctly in the one that I was in as well. So that's pretty incredible. But yeah, what a fantastic March Madness that was had. And I thought just kind of to cap off the year, let's go ahead and do our way too early Final Four predictions. I thought that would be a fun little add-on to do. And my four for next year, I did go to ESPN. I looked at the way too early top 25. I looked at the starting lineups. The projected starting lineups for next year, and this is the four I came up with. I'm actually pretty happy with it. I've got some teams that I feel comfortable in there. I had some teams that I just took some flyers on, and I know, I mean, heck, at the end of the day, it's just a list. Literally a little under a year until the next tournament, but still. So my way too early Final Four predictions. I've got Houston in there. They returned 3 players averaging 10 points per game, including Jamal Sheed, who averaged 15 points per game during the tournament. They also add a top 10 recruit in Jarace Walker. You've got UCLA. I just can't quit them after their Final Four run a couple of years ago. They do return Johnny Juzang and Jamie Jock, as well as a couple of other they get a couple of other top 15 recruits back as well. So UCLA, I can't quit you. It's going to take maybe a year of getting bounced in the first weekend before I'm like, okay, maybe that's a little bit too far. Then I've got North Carolina in there as well. I don't think this run was a fluke. They played better than an 8 seed. They were better than an 8 seed. And this is all, of course, predicated on Caleb Love and Armando Bacot returning. But that article said that they would. I trust the article. I'm going with North Carolina, and then I'm also going to stick with Tennessee, who I liked going into the tournament this year and only loses 1 starter. So that's where I think these teams are going to be. Coming into next year. So that's my way too early Final Four: Houston, UCLA, North Carolina, and Tennessee. What an incredible March Madness. What an incredible Final Four. Can't wait till next season. So with that, let's go ahead real quick and hear from our friends of the show. First, from Anchor. The Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right to your computer or mobile device and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need in a podcast in one place. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Also, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game. You can hear that every week wherever podcasts can be heard. Board games build bridges. Mute the microphones. There we go. It is time to talk some MLB. I said in the open, there was a while where we didn't think this day might come, Michael, as we bring in newly affiliated Twitch streamer, a 3C Media star, Micheal Robinson. Welcome back, my man. And dude, like I said, it was a day we thought might not come, or at least wouldn't come until maybe the summer. Through all the lockout stuff, but it is finally time to talk some MLB. Finally time to talk about the season.
I was starting to get a little nervous there about how long this lockout would go. But I'm really excited to see that something got done, and finally excited to get some baseball. Spring training is done. It's a wrap. We got regular season right around the corner, opening day. It's going to be fun, man. I'm really excited. I'm happy to be back here.
I said during the podcast a few times with B. Scott that I felt like once we started canceling games, then it was just going to be a slippery slope of who knows when we're coming back, because that was like the main rock that both sides had to bargain with, was that neither side really wanted to miss games, but they thought the other one was going to flinch first. And so I was like, once we start missing games, it could be May, June, July, who knows? But yeah, definitely ready to get started. So we're gonna do a little off-season in review first. We'll talk about the results of the lockout. We do get universal DH. DH now comes to the National League. Ties in the standings will be broken by statistical tiebreakers rather than tiebreaker games. We also have a new playoff format: 12 teams, 6 from each league, a la the NFL or the old NFL format, where you will have the top two seeds in each league receiving byes to the division series, and the wild card round will consist of a best of three. With the higher seed hosting all 3 games. So the 3 will play the 6, the 4 will play the 5. The only thing that is not similar to the way the NFL used to do their playoffs is that there will not be any reseeding. So if the 5 seed wins, they're still going to play. That's a bad example. If the 6 seed wins, they're still going to play the 2 seed, as far as from what I can tell. Or hopefully I'm interpreting that correctly, but that's what I read at least. Automatic runner at second in extra innings will remain after it was originally eliminated. That's kind of rough. I don't really like that. The Ohtani rule was implemented if a team voluntarily waives the DH so that the pitcher can hit. That pitcher can remain in the game even after they're done pitching. So moving forward, the question was, what off-season change are you most excited for? For me, oddly enough, as much as I didn't want to see it during the negotiations and that kind of thing, I'm really excited for playoffs expansion. Originally, there was a strong chance there were going to be 14 teams, which is way too many. That defeats the purpose of 162 games. You could pretty much shorten the season by a month, but obviously the reason why we're adding playoff teams is for money, and more money is made if you play 162 games and then play, however many playoff games with 14 teams. So that was the whole goal. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to play basically a month and a half of meaningless baseball before we get to the postseason. But I think with, if it would have been 14 teams last season, we would have seen the Blue Jays, Mariners, Reds, and Phillies all make the postseason last year. We can argue that those teams are borderline as far as playoff caliber, but only expanding to 12 teams gives everyone what they want. The 162 game season still matters. The end of the season drama still remains, and the owners get playoff games and more money. So I think this was the best solution to a lot of the different elements that they were trying to work together to figure out how do we expand the playoffs but also remain at 162 games and make every single one of those games count.
And I'm going to have to agree with you on the playoff expansion being probably the most hyped thing, and purely because I love playoff baseball. There's always that tense feeling around every single game of a series that just gets you absolutely pulled in. And you're going to have teams like the Mariners who missed a game by missed the playoffs by 1 game last year. Getting teams like that who probably should have been there, get them involved, get them in the dance and see what happens. I feel like it's going to help upset some of those perennial teams like the Astros having to go through, a bit more stiffer competition from other teams that have probably have gone up. But the other thing I'm really going to say on this too is I think the runner at second rule should only be instituted after 12 innings, because at that point I just want to go to bed, man.
Yeah, I'm all for the gimmicks after we've played at least 1 extra inning, because I think the statistics go down after you play after you play 10 innings. I think it drastically goes down as far as the rate of games that go 11, 12, 13. So I can understand okay, we played 1 extra inning. Now we're going to do the gimmicks. Or I've always, like you said, caveat maybe after the 12th inning, so we've played a full extra 3 innings of free baseball. Okay, now it's the 13th. We're going to do the crazy, let's just try to finish the game. I am on board with it then, but not immediately. I wish it was something like that, like you said. That'd be nice to see. So looking at some of the offseason moves here, Justin Verlander, he returns to the Astros. The Mets, they signed starting pitcher Max Scherzer, Starling Marte in the outfield. They get Eduardo Escobar, a great utility infielder. They trade for Chris Bassett. The Mariners, they go out and sign AL Cy Young winner from last year, Robbie Ray. They also acquire Adam Frazier, Jesse Winker, and Eugenio Suarez. Sorry about your Reds, Michael. Blue Jays, they signed Kevin Gossman, starting pitcher. They addressed their pitching a lot, actually. They went out and got Yusei Kikuchi as well, and then they also acquired Matt Chapman. The Rangers, they go out and spend like what, 578 million or whatever it was on like their infield alone. It felt like they add second baseman Marcus Semien, shortstop Corey Seager. They also get John Gray and trade for Mitch Garver. The Tigers land Javi Baez. They also get starting pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez. The Cubs sign Marcus Stroman and Seiya Suzuki. The Giants add starting pitcher Carlos Rodon. The Twins trade for Sonny Gray, catcher Gary Sanchez, and third baseman Gio Urshela. They signed Carlos Correa in one of the more head-scratching moves of the offseason. The Yankees acquired Josh Donaldson, shortstop Isaiah Connor Falafel. They also signed first baseman Anthony Rizzo. The Braves acquire Matt Olson. They also re-signed Eddie Rosario and add Kenley Jansen. The Phillies, they go out and add a couple of great outfield bats, Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos. The Rockies, for some reason, were like, you know what? We just traded Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Now's the time to go out and get a bat like Chris Bryant. So they go sign him. Makes perfect sense. The Dodgers, they acquire Craig Kimbrell as well as signing Freddie Freeman. Jorge Soler goes to the Marlins, the World Series hero. Red Sox add Trevor Story at short. The Cardinals reunite with DH Albert Pujols. The White Sox acquire A.J. Pollock in the Kimbrell trade. They also sign relievers Kendall Graveman and Joe Kelly. The Padres acquire Sean Manaea. And why, Michael, does it feel like even after all that craziness, it kind of seems like the teams that won last year are probably going to still reign supreme this year? I mean, I'm excited. There were a lot of great offseason moves, but I was looking at this and I was like, okay, it's time to make my picks, time to boil everything down. And it feels like the powers that be still really, like for it seems like all these other teams made moves, but they also made a couple of moves here and there to remain the top team. So as I'm going through, I'm like, a lot of my picks are very similar to what they've been in years past.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like there was any like major moves that like kind of shook up everything outside of maybe Schwarber Castellanos to Philadelphia, and then the Mariners, who were, like I said earlier, one game away from the postseason, making some big power plays, and two guys I've never heard of with Winker and Suarez. I don't know how they're going to turn out, but there were a couple teams that made some power plays. The head scratchers to me are going to be the Twins making that big push, and Chris Bryant just wants to hit 500-foot home runs, and I can't blame him.
True.
I can't blame him. He got paid. He gets to go in Colorado, where there's a lot of legal things, and he just gets to hit 500-foot dingers. I mean, why not, right?
Exactly. I mean, he's gonna go nuts this year, for sure. And another guy who I think is gonna go nuts this year as well is gonna be Matt Olson. I mean, that's my favorite move of the offseason. The Braves trading and subsequently extending Matt Olson. They get a top-notch first baseman for cheaper than giving a big contract to Freddie Freeman. I think that's the main allure there. Fangraphs has Matt Olson ranked as the third best first baseman behind Freeman, who's second. And on top of that, the Braves add Rosario and bulk up the bullpen with Jansen. So, I mean, this, like I said, that's why it feels like a lot of the powers that be stood pat, because you have these great moves where the Braves, took a situation where they're like, hey, we might lose out on Freddie Freeman, but we're going to go out and basically just replace him with another great first baseman, and at a much cheaper price.
And I would argue that Matt Olson, I understand why Braves Nation is upset, because Frederick was their franchise. He's the face of their franchise. It'd be the same thing as if the Reds cut Joey Votto, but
I thought you were going to be like, it'd be the same as if the Reds traded Jesse Winker, if the Cubs traded Anthony Rizzo. It'd be so similar to those.
It's super similar to those big franchise guys, and me, I have only ever associated the Braves with Freddie Freeman, so it was really weird to not see him there. But Matt Olson is a severely underrated man who's been held down by the Oakland A's, and he's going to go out and put up some big numbers, big highlight reel plays, and I think Atlanta is going to love him.
Yeah, I really do too. I think it's going to be great. What about you? What was your move of the offseason that you think was really really good?
Well, I was just talking about the Mariners made that big power push, because Robbie Ray, I know he's in Toronto. He's a Cy Young winner for a reason. I know a lot of Canadian athletes don't get a whole lot of representation here in the Canadian teams don't get a whole lot of representation here in the U.S. But Robbie Ray was absolutely lights out with those butt cheeks clenched. Like he was an absolute machine. And so in a very, I would argue, a pitcher's friendly park in Seattle, he's going to go out there and do well as they have a stacked outfield with now J-Rod, the J-Rod show coming to town. So you're talking about Haniger, Winker, Kelnick, J-Rod. Like that outfield alone is stacked. And I think that core of the lineup is going to be a really hard thing to beat. I don't think the Mariners should go under the radar at all this year. I really think they have made the right moves to put themselves into a division contention spot rather than just a playoff spot.
Yeah, going out and getting a guy like Robbie Ray is kind of equivalent to what the Cubs did in 2014 when they went out and got John Lester. Like that's kind of the signature. Like, hey, we're gonna make a move. Our window is just beginning to open, and I'm really excited to see what the Mariners are gonna do this season. I do think they're gonna do some good things. Teams that I'm not excited because they didn't make a whole lot of crazy moves. As far as teams that missed out, I think the entire NL Central missed out this offseason. Just imagine the Brewers or Cardinals added one more piece. I feel like they would have a significant leg up on the division. Like if the Brewers had added like Trevor Story or Freddie Freeman, I know they're not typically big spenders, or if the Cardinals, who we thought were in the Story or Correa chase for a while, or if they added a pitcher, then I think we'd be having a whole different conversations about where these two teams stand in the landscape of the National League, like just in general. Like if the Brewers had added one more guy, if the Cardinals had added one more guy, we would be saying, okay, the Cardinals, heck, they took the Dodgers down to the wire last year in the wild card game. What could they do now that they've got a Correa, now that they've got a Story? The Brewers last year, couldn't seem to, hit the broadside of a barn during their series against the Braves. What does adding a guy like, Correa do for them or whoever? Like, it seems like they could have made one or two moves that would have been really, cool and would have like set them into, kind of the more of the like making a deep playoff run conversation. I think those two teams can make deep playoff runs. It's just I think they needed to do more to like set themselves up, even more for those deep playoff runs.
Yeah, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me with the NL Central just kind of staying quiet. I understand that both of those teams, they feel like they have really solid cores, but I also felt like they lost some like key pieces. The Brewers lost what was it? Was it Vogelbach?
Yeah.
He was on the Brewers.
Yeah.
Like he was a really solid piece, like a complementary piece. And that's what they really kind of needed, in my opinion, was a couple more role players that could put up a decent amount of numbers and just play some decent defense. The offense on both those teams, they have some solid pieces, especially if Christian Yelich has a bounce back year, like I'm kind of thinking he's going to have. The Cardinals do have a pretty good lineup. Their problem is pitching. Their problem is especially in the bullpen. They have Giovanni Gallegos, and that's pretty much it. Like it's a really rough division. And then you have teams like the Reds, fire sale. The Cubs didn't do anything because they're the Cubs. The Pirates, let's be real here. Like you have the entire division just decided no. And I felt like that sentiment was really like kind of set in the stone in the first interview that Nick Castellanos had right off the plane, where he just dumped all over the Reds ownership in an interview right off the plane in Philadelphia. So I felt like if that said anything about how the owners of the NL Central were just extra stingy, it says a lot. But who is even more stingy? That would be the Oakland Athletics owner. Quite literally, if you went out today on launch day and bought MLB The Show 22, congratulations, you have spent more money on baseball than an entire baseball franchise. And we're talking about the Reds having a barn sale. I'm sorry, you know what I mean. Yeah. Barn sale, barn fire, whatever. The Oakland A's just threw pieces away. Like, hey, you want Matt Chapman? Go ahead. You want Matt Olson? Here you go. Sean Mania? Goodbye. Like, they're just dumping all of these pieces and literally did nothing else in return. we made jokes last year about the Cubs basically becoming a like AAA baseball team after they dumped everybody. Are the A's just a AA baseball team at this point? Like it's really sad.
Yeah, I mean the only prospect that I know of that they really, I mean there's a couple other like younger guys, but I know as far as like MLB ready guys, they got Cody Pache, and that's pretty much it as far as what they got out of all three of those guys, which is pretty nuts.
It it's ridiculous. And Pache, I feel so bad for that dude taking photos with Ronald Acuna and then like an hour later being traded.
Yeah.
Like it was, I felt so bad for that dude. But I feel like if you're a baseball fan, you're an Oakland Athletics fan, not only are there other teams that feel your pain, but y'all got to say something and send a message to that ownership that this cannot be tolerated because the Oakland A's are a respectable franchise and has a lot of history. And if this keeps going, people are going to stop showing up to games, and then the A's are just going to leave like the Raiders did.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's going to be ridiculous.
one of the things the Athletics are also known for, because they used to be the Philadelphia A's. I think at one point they were the Kansas City A's, unless I'm pulling that out of my butt. I don't know. I think but I know they were at one point the Philadelphia A's, and they've moved quite a bit. So I think that might be the end goal is moving is moving Oakland around a bit. But yeah, let's. Are you looking that up, Michael?
I'm googling it right now.
I gotcha.
Oh, funny thing that I brought up the Raiders moving to Vegas. Apparently, there are a lot of rumors about the A's wanting to move to Vegas.
Yeah,
so I literally just pulled it up, and it's just Vegas, 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 Vegas.
Yeah, I've heard Vegas. I've heard like San Jose. I've heard a bunch of different places. Well, I mean, I guess that's two, but but several places I guess is good. But yeah, I know the A's have moved out around quite a bit, and I think that's probably the main goal. Is
They were the Philadelphia Athletics from 1901 to 1954, the Kansas City Athletics from 55 to 67, and have been in Oakland since 68.
okay. So they've moved a few times. So that fourth move might be around the corner. Let's go ahead and get into hot or cold. Basically, what we do is I will say a take, and we will say whether or not it is a hot take or a cold take. So we're gonna go. We've got a question for each division here. So we're going to get it started with the AL East. The take is the 2022 AL pennant will be won by a team from the AL East. My take is a hot one for me just by sheer volume. I mean, the MLB.com power rankings on March 11th, they had the AL East having 3 teams ranked in the top 10, the Jays, Rays, and Yankees. The Red Sox ranked 12th, so I mean, if you're keeping track, 12 teams in the playoffs, the Red Sox are the 4th team in that division and ranked 12th. USA Today's projected win totals have the Jays, Rays, Yankees, and Red Sox all at 87 wins or above. No other non-division leader in the AL are projected to have more than 85 wins, meaning USA Today believes that the AL East will have 4 teams in the playoffs. Now, granted, we talk about this as well in like the NFL when you have a division like the NFC West the last couple of years, or like the AFC and AFC North and West this season, that hey, you could potentially see all 4 teams in. I don't think 4 teams are going to get in from the AL East. I think just that never seems to happen. We know they're not going to get 5. But they couldn't. I don't think, even if the Orioles were good. But I don't think they're going to end up with 4 in there. But I mean, I do think the AL East is going to have, I think you could put any of these teams, any of those 4, put them in the Central or the West, and they're going to win that division or at least contend for it. So I think that all 4 of the AL East teams, all 4 AL East teams are primed to potentially make a playoff run. And I think at least 3 get in, and I think that the AL pennant will be won by a team from that division. It's just they'll be battle tested come playoff time, and we'll see where they go from there.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that. That is a steaming hot take. Just because, like you said, they have so much depth in all 3, like all of the 4 teams. And the Red Sox made a big push last year. I think they can do that again. The Rays have been solid. I can see them taking a slight step back, but it's hard to count them out, especially the last couple of years that they have just definitely performed above what they probably should have. And then the Blue Jays and Yankees are going to blow the cover off the ball. They both have some solid pitching. They have some holes, especially in the bullpen for both teams, but they are both going to blow the cover off the ball. They're going to be pure offense between like Judge, Stanton, Josh Donaldson, Gallo, and then the Jays. Of course, you have Big Daddy Vladdy, Bo Bichette. Why am I spacing? I don't want to say Correa because it's not Correa.
Matt Chapman.
There's Matt Chapman, the Astros player who went there last year.
George Springer.
Yeah, Springer, who I felt like had a really rough year last year, but could definitely turn it back around this year. Like they have a solid team on all ends, and all of them have pop. And I think this is going to be. I don't see all 4 teams making it, just like you said. That's just the odds don't favor that. But 3 being in is definitely like I'm willing to put money on that to pull out my inner Tade. I'm willing to put money on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a very crazy division, I think, this season. Moving on to the AL Central, the take is the Twins will challenge the White Sox for the division. Originally, when I wrote this question, I was like, I think the Twins could potentially contend for that division, just like I think it's the Tigers, especially adding Austin Meadows, which I forgot to include in the all the offseason moves.
That happened last night.
Exactly. The Twins do add Carlos Correa. They do add Sonny Gray. The White Sox added some pieces to an already great bullpen, but they lose Carlos Rodon, which I think that is a pretty significant loss for them. And they also have recently lost Lance Lynn for a little bit of a period of time as well. But a lot of the question marks for the Twins, it's a lot of question marks for a Twins rotation that was one of the worst in baseball last season. They were 26th in ERA, 23rd in OBA, and had a bullpen ERA of 4.39, which was 21st in Major League Baseball. The White Sox were a top 5 team in ERA and OBA and had the 10th best bullpen, which they added to this offseason. Like I mentioned, you throw Joe Kelly in there, you add Kendall Graveman on top of Liam Hendricks. I mean, that bullpen is absolutely filthy. Both squads hit fairly well last season, and the Twins do add Carlos Correa, Gio Urshela, Gary Sanchez. They do, however, lose Nelson Cruz. They lose Josh Donaldson, and the White Sox are primed with a full season of Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, who both played less than 70 games last season. I think the division as a whole is better because I also think the Royals could be interesting for a little bit at least. So I do, and the Guardians are the Guardians. They'll, that doesn't matter really who's out there for them. They'll be just mediocre. And so. The division as a whole is better, but I just don't think the Twins will have enough to make it at least interesting with the White Sox. I think they'll win some games. It may be interesting in June, but I think as we're winding down the season, I don't think we're going to be talking about like, oh, hey, could the Twins chase down the White Sox? I think the White Sox are going to probably have this division pretty much on wrap again.
Well, as we were talking about earlier, I think the Twins, like, they added in a lot of solid pitching and they added in some strong bats. So I'm going to say hot, but I'm going to put a little like asterisk on that because the Twins have some solid young pitching with guys like Bailey Ober, who's going to have more opportunities in the starting rotation, where he got mainly out of bullpen use last year. And then Sonny Gray, which I saw a lot of, like, he is extremely solid. He's reliable. He has the occasional bad game. And then they still have like Jorge Polanco and a few other guys that are really strong. While I don't think they'll win the division, I don't think Southside is just going to cruise on this one. Because, I mean, like you said, the rest of the division is kind of okay. The Guardians are probably going to trade J-Ram, which it's a lot of talks heating up like as we speak. The Royals, like Bobby Witt, is going to be fun. The Tigers are interesting. The Tigers are very interesting. It's really tough to say if they're going to do great or bad because it involves a lot of people's making the next step, like Casey Mize, like Torque. How well is Javi going to perform? And oh shoot, he had a really strong start of the year. Young outfielder.
Akil Baddoo.
Yes. Akil Baddoo had like. Do you have a lot of young talent in Detroit? I don't think this year they're going to make it tough. Next year, that's for us to talk about next year.
Yeah, for sure. This is a Tigers team that without all those players they added, obviously, in the offseason this year, won like 75, 77 games last season. So, they'll play around 500 ball. The Twins will be better. But I also think that also kind of works in the favor of the White Sox, too, because I think the White Sox are still better than all those teams, and all those teams playing each other are also going to take away from what they can do as far as eating into what the White Sox will be able to overcome.
They were 13 games ahead of the next best team in the division. But the big thing is a lot of the division was only separated by about 5 or 6 games total. So like the Tigers won 77 games, the Royals won 74, the Twins won 73. Like we're talking about like 1 game differences. Guardians now. Guardians. That's an old habit I got to break.
Yeah.
Won 80 games. So like if everybody stays healthy, of course we're talking perfect world here. Like I do see the Twins making it a little bit tougher, but I still see Southside winning that division.
For sure. So finally, moving on to the AL West. The AL will once again run through Houston. This is in the sense that they basically asking, will Houston make the ALCS? They have made an appearance in the last 5 ALCS matchups. For me, this is a hot take. Arguably a top 5 rotation in baseball coming back. They were 3rd in OBA, 7th in ERA in 2021. JV is back from injury, Justin Verlander. They've got Framber Valdez still. They've got Luis Garcia. Lance McCullers, who's dealing with some injury stuff. He'll be back at some point. They still have a Gold Glove first baseman, Yuli Gurriel, who's coming off of his one of his better hitting years. They still have Yordan Alvarez. They still have Altuve. They still have Bregman. They still have Kyle Tucker, who's coming off of a breakout year. And I agree. Carlos Correa, no doubt about it, was the heart and soul of this team, especially post-scandal. Post-scandal, Carlos Correa was the face of, you know what, we don't give a flying F what we did that year. We're still the big bad Astros. We're still the team to beat in the AL, whether or not, whether or not the trash can is there or not, we are still the supreme talent in that in the AL. And so there's no doubt about it that he's, missing him will be significant, but I think that there's still a strong enough team to make it to the ALCS. There's still a good enough team where they can get to where they've been the last few years.
Yeah, I'm going to have to counter that with something Pat McAfee felt at WrestleMania a few days ago with Stone Cold. Stone Cold. And you know why? I'm going to tell you why. Because the trash can bangers aren't better than the top 4 teams in the AL East. I'm going to say that right now. They're not going to be better than the Blue Jays. They're not going to be better than the Yankees. And the big reason why is because A, I don't feel like this team can stay healthy. And B, I just see the loss of Correa, that heart and soul, the drive, and it being replaced by Jose Tuve. Man, like I don't see it this year. Do I see them making the playoffs? Yes. Do I see them? But I don't. I also think I'm sitting here thinking like the Mariners are really tough this year. The Angels, if they're healthy, are going to be tough this year. Like I don't see the Astros having that easy road that they've had the last 4 or 5 years. Like I just don't see it personally.
Yeah,
and that's the bottom line.
There's still a better, like I was looking into it, as far as like where like the Mariners stats rank up, and the Mariners statistically, because I thought about, can the Mariners win the division? Because that's the only team that I really think has a shot besides the Astros of winning the AL West this year. The Angels, we'll see. The Angels should be the best team in the AL West. They have Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. They have Anthony Rendon if he can get his magic back. They have Jared Walsh who had a breakout year. Like, there's no reason why the Angels shouldn't be better. But until I see them be better, I'm not sold on them. And the Mariners, like, on the one hand, they won 90 games last season. It was a great run. But also, like, looking at their statistics, they rank towards the bottom in a lot of like major statistical categories, and that's what's kind of scary because I think their moves will help them obviously improve in those areas, but will it be so much that they can supersede the Astros? And I just don't see that. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at here is I think the Astros, because I mean, looking at the rest of that division, like I said, the Angels and the Mariners, but you also have the Rangers, who, yes, they're better, but they went 60 and 102 last year. So I mean, are they going to be Are they going to be better? Yes. Are they going to be so much better that they win more than 70, 75 games? Their pitching staff is still not the greatest. So it still remains to be seen what they'll do. So I think the Astros can still. One of the reasons why I have them in the ALCS as well is because I think overall they'll be able to position themselves better for the postseason by how well they're going to perform during the regular season. I have no qualms about how they'll do in the regular season. It's the postseason that I have more of a question mark for them.
Yeah, and like I said, when they get to the postseason, if they run into an AL East team, I think there's a pretty strong chance they're going to get buzzsawed because of how strong those teams are between the Yankees and Blue Jays offense and the Rays overall find a way to win with some dude named Randy I don't want to face Randy or Arozarena in the postseason. Like, I don't. And a lot of those other younger pieces step up too. Like, that's going to make it a little bit harder. But I don't see it. Not this time around.
We'll see. I think there'll be that whole division is going to be an interesting thing to watch because there's a lot of question marks in the AL West. Over on the NL side of things, starting with the NL East, the take is the 2022 Braves are better than the 2021 World Champion Braves. I think this is a hot take because either by recovery or acquisition, the Bravos were able to add to already strong units. I know they lost Luke Jackson. That's going to hurt their bullpen. But they add to the night shift by getting Kenley Jansen. That's what the bullpen called themselves last year, the night shift. To go along with, the likes of Tyler Matzik, AJ Minter, Will Smith. They also, at some point, will have Acuna back. They'll have Ozuna back and a full season of Eddie Rosario. We talked about Olsen, who replaces Freeman in an infield that raked last season. They're running it back with a pitching staff of Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson. Oh, by the way, who remembers what Oscar and Ynoa did last April, where he was just mowing people down before he got really mad that he didn't mow one person down and punched a wall and was out for a while. This team overcame so much last season and now is getting those pieces that they had to overcome not having back. So I think that's going to make them even better coming into 2022.
For me, I'm going to say this is kind of a warm take. Like, they made improvements by obviously you're going to get Ronald Acuna back. That takes up your entire roster. But I also feel like, losing Soler and then using Jock, who were very powerful pieces, like, that hurts. That hurts a lot. But you also have, still have Austin Riley there who's going to put up numbers. Dansby Swanson is going to get on base and hurt you, like, especially on the backs. And bullpen wise, I know they're like, oh yeah, Kenley Jansen. It's kind of like Craig Kimbrell, right? Everyone was like, oh yeah, look at the numbers, man. This guy played great. When you actually watched him, it was a little bit more like every single game you were about to have a heart attack. And I just don't know if Kenley can kind of recapture some of that magic he had just a few years ago. I think he's going to give up more than he saves. Or at least not perform as they probably expect him to. But I think this team has enough young talent, especially arms-wise, to really take a next step and really kind of retain their spot in the division. But it just kind of depends on, can they overpower Philadelphia? Because that's the team I see in that division that's actually going to scare them this year, is Philadelphia. But if they can do that and they have everybody take a next step, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what this team can do with all those pieces back. And I think the thing is that it's kind of like Kenley the last few years with the Dodgers, where, like, he's not needed to be, 2018, 2017 Kenley, 2016 Kenley. I mean, they still have Will Smith, like I said, AJ Minter. They still have a lot of good pieces in that bullpen where he's not just the guy. He's a guy in a bullpen that's pretty stellar. So I'm excited to see what the Braves do. The take for the NL Central, we gotta at least poop on the NL Central one more time. Just because it's where our allegiances lie. The take is the NL Central is Major League Baseball's most boring division. That's a hot take. The team is, the team that made the biggest splashes, oddly enough, were the Cubs, getting Stroman and Suzuki, but I don't see them really contending for the division. The Pirates and Reds are in full sell mode and rebuilding, as we've talked about. And the Brewers and Cardinals are running it back, but there's nothing that really makes you excited. I mean, Pujols back with the Cardinals, that's pretty cool. I will admit, even as much as he tortured me as a young Cubs fan, like I'm glad to see, him back. But there, like I said, there's not really any move that says like, okay, they can contend with the Dodgers. Okay, they can contend with the Braves. They can contend with insert team name here in the National League. Because like I said, for instance, imagine if the Cardinals had signed Story and traded Paul DeYoung for some pitching. Imagine if they would have signed Kinley. Imagine if they would have traded for Kimbrel, even though we talked about they're not necessarily their former selves, but they are a good piece to have. What if the Brewers had traded for Matt Chapman or signed Kinley to add to an already stellar bullpen to make that bullpen even, stronger? That would have created some buzz. That would have been like, okay, what is, this Brewers team? They added Kinley to the bullpen. What? This Brewers team has Chapman at the hot corner to put in that lineup to maybe give him some juice. Wow, that's awesome. I mean, they did go out and get McCutchen, so that's cool. The Cardinals went out and got, Pujols. And I mean, these were, like I said, teams that were already good. It just stinks that, I feel like they all had an opportunity to become just a little bit better, and they're like, nah, we're good. Our division stinks anyway. We'll be fine.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, hold on. I think I might actually need a little prop for this. Hold on. I got it right here. Ah. You know what to say about this? On fire. Like, this, unless you really, 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 really like prospects and you have some guys you were keeping an eye on, there's really not much to see here. Move along. Like, as a Reds fan, the only thing I have to look forward to, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. That's pretty much it. And then like Jonathan India taking another step. Like, that's pretty much it. There's really not much here. We're not going to contend for the division. We're not going to make the wild card. Like, it's just not going to happen unless there's some big offseason move, which, knowing the Reds, involves trading someone away. Like, I just don't... It's tough. Like, the Pirates are the Pirates. We all know what they're going to do, which is nothing. The Cubs, that what was it, Suzuki?
Yeah,
I believe was his name. Like, that was interesting, and that is the only interesting move the Cubs, like anybody in the division, made. Like, Stroman was nice, but no one was really paying a ton of attention to that because there was everything else going on before. Because I think that was signing right before the lockout.
Yeah.
So there was other stuff going on, and it kind of got buried. I do think Stroman adds personality to the Cubs team, which is clearly lacking some sort of like outward voice. And I think he's going to be huge. But like, the Cardinals made a big move last year. I wish they would have done something this year. And the Brewers have always just been this really solid team that doesn't like to bring in a ton of outside talent. But here's an interesting stat. Did you know that the one player that has the highest batting average in Milwaukee across a multiple set of games is Andrew McCutchen?
I did not know that.
So that made sense to me, just because apparently Milwaukee was his home away from home for all these years. Why not make it his home? And again, the Brewers are going to be buzzing if Christian Yelich goes back to MVP form. But you can also say that about the Dodgers with Belly.
Yeah.
And geez, did you imagine remember how annoying those ads were between those two? And now they're both like towards the bottom of their own prospective teams' lineups. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, there was a pack opening I did in MLB The Show last year where I opened like Christian Yelich, and I was like excited, but then I was like, wait, he's a gold. Like, that's weird. Because normally, that's a diamond player you're excited to get, and it's like, oh well, actually, they're having a rough year. So yeah, I do want to see those two bounce back, not just because I drafted Belly last night on my fantasy team, but also because those guys when they ranked were really good for baseball. Final division take here: the Giants will repeat as NL West champions, and when I originally wrote this, I thought like could the Giants do it? The Giants and Dodgers both won 107 and 106 games last season, respectively. But the thing is that I think this is a cold take. If there's a team that I have more faith in duplicating that, it's the Dodgers. The Giants do add Carlos Rodon to a strong staff. They're really well coached, which means look out for some sort of weird breakout year with Alex Cobb, and Alex Wood is going to have a solid season. The bullpen was the only unit in the big leagues last year that had a sub-3 ERA, so that's pretty cool. Offensively, they're running it back with Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, Evan Longoria, Mike Yastrzemski. They add Jock Peterson. The Giants' projected win total is around the mid to high 80s. I think they were probably in the 70s last year, and I think they'll be better than that, just not better than the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers win that.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that because the Dodgers lineup is absolutely terrifying from top to bottom. Their pitching rotation, terrifying top to about the middle. Their bullpen, very interesting, but because you're going to have an offense that can really kind of save you, like I don't see the Giants doing it. And I think losing Chris Bryant and Buster Posey is going to hurt more than they think. Buster Posey has been the heart and soul of that franchise for the last decade, and it's gonna hurt because that's that consistent leadership you don't have. And KB was that big bat that came up in clutch situations that if you can imagine if he made that one, I think that was that one line out in the game that kind of sealed it for the Dodgers. Like, oh man, like they came real close. And I think they're going to be, at best, competing for that wild card spot. I just don't see him doing it this year.
Yeah, I think they will miss Posey, especially just because he is not only is he that great face of the franchise guy, he also had a one last hurrah as being one of the better catchers in baseball last season. So yeah, I think he'll definitely be missed. So with that, it is time to get into our division winners. Now, Brandon did send me his division winners as well as his wild cards and champions. So we'll start with them first. We'll start with the AL. We'll give our AL division winners all in a row, and then we'll go to the NL as well. So for the AL, for B. Scott, he has the Jays, White Sox, and Astros, and I am right in lockstep with B. Scott. The Blue Jays, they did the first of all, we mentioned at the start of the MLB portion of the show that even with all the moves, it seems like these teams kind of stood pat. As far as where we see them, as far as the standings are concerned. So I was like, you know what? In each division or each league, I'm going to pick a division winner that's different from last year. Because I think there's a good possibility it could be the same ones, but I also was like, I'm going to switch things up a little bit, hopefully. With the Blue Jays, I mean, they did so much. I mean, this was already a good team from last year. Their pitching was, definitely a side for them that wasn't, the greatest. It was definitely the weaker point. They hit really well last season. They add to that by adding Matt Chapman. They needed help pitching. They're going to have a full season of Barrios. They're going to have Kevin Gossman. They're going to have Yusei Kikuchi. I know they lost Robbie Ray. They still have Hyun-Jin Ryu. And we'll see. The bullpen's probably the biggest question mark, but I also have faith in this team to maybe add at the deadline. So I really like what the Blue Jays are about. They're my division winner as well as B. Scott's. White Sox, mentioned it earlier. I just don't think there's enough from the other teams, in that division to really make a push. And then the West, I do have the Astros. Just like I said, I think they still have the talent in that organization, in that clubhouse, to make it through another regular season in a strong way. Their pitching staff is strong, so I do think they're going to end up winning the AL West.
So for the top two teams, I mean, Jays, South Side, for the reasons that we both stated earlier. The Blue Jays, I think, are going to shock a lot of people, probably in their own division, because the Yankees have been that front and steady team for way too long. And then the Rays and Red Sox, I think no one's really anticipating. They know they're good, but they weren't good enough to make it over the hump last year. But you have a lot of young talent that's taken another step, another year of experience, another year of hunger, especially from their top guys. So I think the Jays are going to blow the cover out the ball and right to the top of that division. South side, like I said, the Twins are going to make it interesting. There's a lot of interesting teams, but ultimately South side is going to take that division, and the White Sox are going to just probably, I don't want to say cruise control, but I think they're probably going to win by like 6 or 7 games versus the 13 they had last year. And this is where things get different, because I went with the Mariners over the Astros. Reason why? I hate the Astros. But in a realistic sense, like, there's just something about what they're doing, and my gut just told me this is going to be a team that is going to probably stun that division, stun both the Angels and stun the Astros, especially with the young talent coming up. I think J-Rod is going to have a much better start than Kelenic did. Kelenic has gotten better. He has had a pretty strong spring. He's had a really good, like, all the people he's worked with throughout the offseason said he's been fantastic. He's gotten a lot better. So I think that outfield and that lineup, as well as the addition of Robbie Ray, is going to push them over the hump. Now, I still think the Astros are a playoff team, but I think it's going to take them over the hump. And maybe they win by a game, win the division by a game this year instead of missing the playoffs by a game like they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what the Mariners do. I think they're going to be a very interesting team. I think they take that next step. I'm just not sure they're ready to go at the division. NL, on the NL side of things, B. Scott has the Braves in the East, the Cardinals in the Central, the Dodgers in the West. I too have the Braves in the East. Like I said earlier, I think they're just as good as they were last year, if not better. They've added a lot of great pieces, and we'll have a full season. Well, not full season, but it's a bigger helping of Ronald Acuna this year, which will be nice. I do have the Brewers, just because I like them just a little bit better than the Cardinals right now. It's kind of a coin flip between those two teams anyway. And like I said, the Dodgers, they're the class of that division. The Giants had a fantastic season last year, but I just don't see them doing that again. So I've got the Dodgers coming back and winning the NL West this year.
See, I'm going to go with the Phillies over the Braves purely because, again, just looking at the upgrades that the Phillies did, I feel like they outweigh what the Braves did. It's ultimately going to come down to how well Nick Castellanos, Schwarber, and Harper perform together, as well as you have, still guys like Rhys Hoskins in there. And, oh, shoot, who's that third baseman? He's young. But I feel like that team across the entire board. Yeah, Alec Bohm. Who's played for well. They still got Didi Gregorius, who's played well. Bryson Scott has been having an electric spring training for some reason. And then you have, Wheeler, Nola, Ranger Suarez has been playing solid. You have a solid bullpen. They got Knievel, they got Brad Hand, who is okay, Alvarado, and I feel like they're going to make an off-season move to bolster that pitching. I see that happening. I don't know who. I feel like it might be Didi, but they're going to add some pitching to that already stacked lineup and really make a run for it this year, especially since last year they only missed by what? Let me pull that up because I'm curious now. I had it pulled up a second ago, and then I clicked off of it because I'm an idiot. They were only 6.5 games back, and I feel like that's going to be a lot closer this year. So I'm going to take the Phillies over them. Brewers, I think, especially since we were both talking about how Yelly's probably going to have a bounce back year, I think the Brewers are going to edge out the Cardinals this year. Even though both teams are very similar to each other, they both have very similar strong points, they both have very similar weak points. It's just ultimately a matter of who gets hot and can they maintain it, as well as staying healthy. I think the Brewers are going to edge them out this time. That and the Cardinals beat my Reds on my homecoming game, so I still don't like them. And then the Dodgers, like we said earlier, I just don't see that team competing. Tatis being gone for a couple months is going to hurt the Padres. The Giants, they had a great run, a commendable run, fantastic run last year. But I don't see that happening this year, especially since this isn't one of the weird odd years where they like to just make a run. No, they like, what was it, like every odd year they make a run?
It was even year. It was they had the whole
Every
hashtag.
even year?
Yeah, it was hashtag believin' when they were playing the Cubs in the ALD or NLDS a couple years ago.
That is hilarious. But oh, it is an even year. No, I'm still going Dodgers.
uh, Going over to the wild card teams, we'll go ahead and knock out them both with this little segment here. For B Scott, he's got the Red Sox, Rays, and Angels. In the AL, he's got I do like the fact. I mean, he believes in them actually getting things together a lot more than I do. And hey, I'd love to see Mike Trout in the postseason. It's been 8 years, so hopefully he can get back. As well as Shohei. And then he's got the Mets, Phillies, and Giants in the NL. For me, I've got the Rays. They just seem to do it. They it doesn't matter who they throw out there. They just seem to do it. They're a strong team every single year. Despite getting rid of guys and trading guys, a week before the season starts, they're still maintaining that level of competition. The Yankees are a team in there for me as well. And then I originally had the Red Sox, but then I was like, well, again, I don't think all four teams are going to make it. So if there's one that I want to flip flop, it is the Mariners in. And so I have the Mariners in there as well. In the NL, I think the Giants will be there. Like I said, I think they're running it back with a team that won 107 games. Do I think they're going to win 100 games? No. But do I think they're going to be in the mid-80s? No. I think they're going to be, a solid enough team to be there. The Cardinals, again, coin flip for that division, and then the Mets. I think they've done enough good moves, because it's not like they threw a bunch of money at just, they didn't go and trade for James Shields like the Padres did that one year. They didn't go and make some big splash, throwing like a ton of money at like Chris Archer, like 5 years after his prime. Like they went and they got Max Scherzer to pair with DeGrom. Now I know they're both like one is kind of hurt, one is very much hurt. We'll see when DeGrom retakes the field. But I mean that's as good of a top of your rotation as you can get. Their bullpen is solid. There's some question marks here and there, but I mean I think that's a lot of bullpens. And then they went out and got Marte. They went out and got Eduardo Escobar. They didn't just, throw money at some random player, however many years after they probably should have. Like, they went out and they made solid moves, and I think that gets them to the postseason. So I've got the Mets in there as well.
So for the AL, I'm going to go with the Red Sox, Yankees, and Astros. For all the reasons I stated earlier, I won't rehash them here, but for all the reasons I stated earlier, I feel like those three teams are for sure a lock to make it in the postseason. And for the NL, the Braves make it back, the Cardinals make it in, and then I'm going with the Padres, especially if Tatis comes back healthy and he gets hot. Slam Diego is a hard team to stop. And that rhymed. I did not mean that to. They only asterisk I'm putting on that is on the Mets. If DeGrom gets healthy, which I feel bad for that AAA Cardinals team, because every time DeGrom's hurt and he's on an IL stint, they always play that AAA Cardinals team and torches them. As well as if Max can stay healthy, get back to 100% and then stay there, or at least stay on that 190% because it's Mad Max. He's going to play hurt because that's what Mad Max does. The offense is there. The pitching is there. It's whether or not they can stay healthy enough to keep it going, which has been the Mets' problem for the last few years. If they can stay healthy, then I think they're a wild card team for sure.
Yeah, the thing with the Padres is I really like. There's the one thing where I was like, do I think they'll be better than the Giants in the NL West? Was just the fact that it's without Tatis. That's a big question mark. Their bullpen is a question mark as well, and because they don't have Melanson like they did last year, and then also as far as their pitching staff, you have Yu Darvish, but he had a bad year last year, or at least a bad second half. You have Blake Snell, can he capture his form like we know he can? Or is he going to be more of the middle of the road pitcher like he was last year? How is Mike Clevenger going to look? How is Sean Manaea struggled a little bit last year? So who are these players going to play to the level we expect? I don't know. I mean, it's a thing where maybe San Diego Padre fans are really happy because I'm finally off of them. They were my World Series pick last year and my pick at the beginning of the playoffs 2 years ago, and now I'm finally kind of off the bandwagon. So who knows? This probably means that this is where the Padres start to go off. Moving on, we're gonna do our championship series, which B Scott did not send me, but. For the AL and NL championship series, who we think is going to be playing for the chance to go to the World Series, in my ALCS, I've got the Blue Jays over the Astros. I like my choices in the sense that I stayed with like the trends like I normally do, but I also, I went with a little bit more of my gut as well. So the Astros this would make it 6 years in a row that they've made the ALCS. But like I said earlier, Carlos Correa was the heart and soul of that team, and I think where that's going to matter the most is in the postseason when it was the entire world was like, please don't let the Astros win. Please don't let them win. And Carlos Correa was like, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to go, force a, game 7 in San Diego a couple years ago against the Rays. We're going to go, we're going to hit a gigantic bomb against the Red Sox and check our watches at the same time. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that team in the postseason. I think that's really what's going to hurt them. Also, they've lost in the ALCS in every odd year every even year during this run. They won the ALCS in 17. They lost in 18. They won in 19, lost in 20, won in 21. So they're going to lose in 22. As far as the NL goes, I think for the third year in a row, it's going to be the Dodgers and the Braves. And they're just flip flopping. They're just going back and forth. The Dodgers, I think, will make it back to the World Series. I just think in this instance, I don't know. It's one of those things where like these are the teams where I kind of hashed out all the playoff matchups in my head. I was like, this is the one that makes the most sense. And I don't think the Braves will beat the Dodgers this time around. I don't like the Braves to be repeat champions. I don't think they'll do that. So I mean, I like what the Dodgers are doing. Obviously, they're going to make some insane move at the deadline, like they have for the last few years. They're going to be stellar. And again, I think it's another situation where, they've gone. I think every other year, something like that, as well, because they've been in the NLCS. It feels like every year as well. So I've got the Dodgers and the Blue Jays squaring off in the World Series.
Well, I was going to originally put in the Blue Jays over the Astros.
I thought that was interesting because you said it was a stone cold take, but then you had them in your ALCS anyway.
I think it was just more out of habit.
Yeah.
Because like they've been there for the last 5 years. And then I sat there and looked down like, wait, no, get that out of here. So I'm still going to take the Blue Jays to win it. But they're going to beat Southside Chicago White Sox, who I think are going to put it together and make it to the ALCS. They're just continuing to take steps. Right, so this is just another step in that they get the division series win. They go to the ALCS, and I think the Blue Jays just have a little bit. I don't want to say drive, a bit more power.
And they say hungry, they devour. Yeah, exactly.
But I just have that gut feeling that like the Blue Jays, if they can stay healthy and keep it together, they're gonna make a World Series push this year, not next year, not the year after that. Because they're young and they're inexperienced. No, they're going to be a problem this year. And then for the NL, as entertaining as these Dodgers, Braves flip-flopping would have been, again, because those series have been very entertaining the last couple of years, I think the Phillies make it there. And I think the Philadelphia Phillies they crush the Dodgers' dreams purely because the Dodgers they're the Dodgers. They'll go back next year anyway. But I think the Philadelphia Phillies are going to put it all together. Bryce Harper, the Floof, the Quaff himself, and Nick Castellanos, especially in the postseason, like I think you're going to go off. And then you're going to have World Series Kyle Schwarber, which, Craig, you should know is a problem.
Yes. Hitting tanks into the Allegheny. That's still my favorite memory from that postseason run in 15. Now, looking at the World Series, it is finally time. B. Scott, his World Series kind of wacky, but I like it. He's got the Mets over the White Sox in the World Series. That would be, I like it. Like I said, it's off the wall, but I like it. For me, I'm about to disappoint some fan bases because in 2020, I had the Dodgers over the Yankees because it just made sense in 2020 because, you had all the fiasco in 17, you had the fiasco, they ran into a buzzsaw in 2018, they ran into the surprise miracle Nationals in 19, so it only makes sense that in a shortened season where fans could still rag on them, they would win, kind of the, shortened 2020 campaign. But then I backed off of it, which is probably the best thing the Dodgers could have had going, because I said it's going to be the Padres. I got caught up in Slam Diego, and then we all saw how that turned out. Last year, Slam Diego, I bet on them again. I said the Padres and the Yankees are going to make it. Neither of those teams made the actual division series, with the Padres not making the playoffs at all. So take this for what it's worth. I've got the Blue Jays over the Dodgers. I think that the Blue Jays get it done. I like their pitching staff. The bullpen's a question, but I trust in them to either improve or develop someone. They still have Jordan Romano down there. They've got the bats to do it. They add Chapman, they add Gossman, they add Kikuchi. The Dodgers are going to be strong, but I don't see them beating the Blue Jays. I think I'm going a little bit too all in too because last year I wanted to put the Jays in the playoffs and I didn't. And I know they still didn't make it, but I felt bad about it. I was like, oh man, I really wanted to see them do well. And this year I'm going in all in on it. I think the Blue Jays beat the Dodgers in the World Series.
So I just mentioned how World Series Kyle Schwarber is going to be a problem. And ultimately, I think in the World Series, the inexperience of the moment catches up to the younger Blue Jays squad, and the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be your World Series champions. Now, I think I had White Sox Braves last year in the White Sox winning. So take that as you will.
Much better.
Right.
Yeah, much better prediction than me.
I got half right. And that was just because I was all in. I think it was like the day after those Southside unis got announced, and I was just all in. I wanted to see those jerseys in the World Series with all of my heart. But I want to see the Blue Jays in it. And I want to see Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber in it as well. And I think that switch flips inside of Kyle Schwarber's brain in October, and he turns into a monster. And I think he's going to go off up in Philadelphia. And Nick Castellanos, Harper, Hoskins, you name it. I think they're just going to overpower this young, inexperienced team, especially with the veteran pitching they have up there as well.
Getting revenge for Joe Carter's home run in 1993, I think it was, with the Blue Jays beating the Phillies in that one. So the Phillies turn the tide in this one. So there are our predictions. Opening day's going to be here in a couple of days. We're really excited to get there. Remember that you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. You can follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Go to the YouTube channel if you haven't gone there already. You guys have been killing it with showing support, not only there but also on the TikTok channel, 3C Media over there. And then remember, you can watch us live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. And remember, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. Michael, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitch and on Twitter at DriveTru, DR1VETRU. As again, a newly minted Twitch affiliate. Been on there a lot, on the Twitters a lot, so you can find me there.
Well, next week we will be discussing another basketball tournament. We'll be talking about the NBA postseason. We're also going to dabble in a little USFL as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, but until then, have a good one, everybody.